The audience of The View was electric that morning, buzzing with that peculiar kind of excitement that only came when a true Hollywood legend walked into the studio. The chatter built into a roar as the announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. "Please welcome Academy Award-winning actress, Julia Roberts!" And then through the bright curtains she appeared. The applause thundered. Cameras panned to catch every face in the crowd, people standing, clapping, shouting her name. Julia Roberts, radiant in a cream-white suit and understated gold jewelry, waved and smiled. That iconic, 1,000-watt grin that had once defined an entire decade of romantic comedies. Even in her quiet steps, there was command. The natural ease of a woman who had lived her life under lights brighter than these. At the table, Joy Behar stood to greet her, hands extended and voice brimming with charm. "Oh my God, look at you! Still stunning! Sit, sit! The Queen of Hollywood is in the building!" Julia laughed softly, that lilting familiar sound that instantly warmed a room. "That's way too kind," she said, settling into her seat, crossing one leg over the other. "But I'll take it." Whoopi Goldberg smiled from across the table. "We're just glad to have you here, honey. It's been too long." "Yeah," Joy chimed in. "You've been hiding from us. What, are you too fancy for daytime TV now?" Julia chuckled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "No hiding. Just working. Family, scripts, life. You know how it goes." The crowd laughed and clapped again. Everything felt easy, natural. The hosts exchanged light jokes, teasing her about her new film, a sweeping drama about love, regret, and second chances. Julia talked about the project with that signature calm confidence, describing her character's emotional journey and how, after years of lighter roles, she'd wanted to explore something deeper. "It's really about starting over," Julia said, gesturing lightly, "about realizing that love, real love, is more about truth than perfection." The audience sighed, charmed. Joy nodded, flipping through her cards, her tone still light. "So you're not doing Pretty Woman 2 anytime soon?" Julia laughed, shaking her head. "Oh no, that ship has sailed. I don't think anyone needs to see me running around Beverly Hills in thigh-high boots again." The audience erupted with laughter. Even Joy laughed, a sharp, theatrical sound that filled the studio. But behind it there was a flicker of something, curiosity or maybe mischief. She leaned in, resting an elbow on the table, her voice lowering slightly. "Now, Julia," she said, in that tone she reserved for when she wanted to stir things up. "You've been talking a lot in interviews about how Hollywood's changed. About how you think movies today have lost their soul. That's a pretty strong statement." "What did you mean by that?" Julia straightened slightly, her smile dimming just a notch. "I meant exactly that," she said, still calm, still kind. "We used to make films that connected people, that made you feel something real. Now it feels like the industry's chasing clicks, controversy, not connection." Joy nodded slowly. "So you think today's Hollywood is shallow?" "I think it's distracted," Julia replied, her tone thoughtful. "There's a difference." The audience murmured in agreement, but Joy wasn't done. She tilted her head, smiling that half-smile that always came before a jab. "Some people online think your comments sounded a little judgmental. You said, and I quote, 'The industry's forgotten what real storytelling is.' That sounds like you're calling out a lot of people, younger actresses included." The crowd's reaction was immediate, a few gasps, a few awkward laughs. Julia didn't blink. She held Joy's gaze, her voice steady. "That wasn't directed at anyone," she said evenly. "It was directed at a culture. We used to tell stories about people, not algorithms. It's not a criticism. It's a plea." Joy smiled tightly. "But don't you think maybe that's just nostalgia talking? I mean, let's be honest. You were the face of rom-coms in the 90s. Maybe you're just missing the days when you were the one in the spotlight." The studio lights dimmed slightly as the commercial break sign flashed above the cameras. Crew members rushed onto the stage with bottled water and notes, while the hosts pretended to sip calmly and check their cards. The air, though, was thick. You could almost feel the tension curling around the edges of the table. Julia Roberts sat with her hands folded in her lap, poised, her smile polite but distant. Joy Behar, meanwhile, kept her eyes on her notes, flipping through them as if she were looking for something that would undo the awkwardness she had just created. The floor manager counted down to live again, and the applause sign blinked. The audience clapped, more tentatively this time. "And we're back!" Whoopi announced with her usual composed warmth, but there was a faint strain in her voice. "We're here with the legendary Julia Roberts, talking about her incredible new film and her thoughts on the state of Hollywood." "Legendary," Joy repeated, forcing a grin. "Though I think we just got a little taste of why she's not afraid to speak her mind." Julia tilted her head, smiling faintly. "Would you rather I didn't?" she asked, voice low but firm. The audience chuckled, half in amusement, half in disbelief that she'd fired back so smoothly. Joy gave a short laugh. "Oh, I love when guests come here ready to debate," she said. "Keeps the show interesting." "Debate's good," Julia replied. "As long as it's honest." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Joy's grin froze just a little before she recovered. "All right, well, honesty it is," she said briskly. "You've been in this business for what, 30 years now?" 35, Julia corrected gently. "Right, 35. And you've seen it all. The glamour, the gossip, the good, the bad. But come on, you've got to admit, this generation of actresses, they're brave. They're calling out inequality, demanding pay transparency, speaking out about politics. Don't you think that's progress?" Julia looked at her, expression calm, eyes steady. "Yes, it's progress," she said. "But speaking out doesn't mean much if the system stays the same. Progress isn't just about talking. It's about changing the way people in power listen." The audience murmured. Whoopi nodded approvingly, but Joy leaned forward again. "So who are the people in power, Julia?" she asked, her tone suddenly sharp. "You've been at the top of the food chain for decades. Don't you think people like you have a responsibility too?" Julia's expression didn't waver, though the faintest flicker of irritation passed through her eyes. "Of course," she said. "And that's why I speak up. That's why I produce my own films, why I fight for fair pay for my crews, why I make sure the people around me are treated with respect. That's what using power responsibly looks like." Joy opened her mouth to counter, but Julia continued, her voice clear and controlled. "But when women speak up, really speak up, it's often labeled as emotional or difficult or, in this case..." She paused deliberately. "Too nostalgic." The audience erupted in applause again. Even Sarah Haynes, seated beside Joy, leaned in slightly and said, "She's got a point." Joy's face tightened. She gave a little laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. All right, she said. "We love a passionate guest. I'm just saying, maybe some of your comments could be taken as, what's the word, dismissive. Only by someone who wants to dismiss them," Julia replied evenly. A low ooh swept through the audience. Joy tried to keep smiling, but the edges of her voice had gone brittle. "Oh, come on now, Julia," she said, forcing a laugh. "Don't make me the villain here." Julia leaned back, her tone still warm, but her eyes locked on Joy's. "No one's making you anything." "Joy, I'm just answering your questions." Whoopi quickly jumped in, trying to steer the ship. Okay, before this turns into a full-on showdown," she said, half joking. "Let's talk about the movie again, yeah?" Julia smiled graciously at Whoopi. "Thank you, Whoopi," she said. "That's why I came." But Joy wasn't done. She gave one last push, her tone a mix of humor and defiance. "Well, you've definitely given Hollywood something to talk about after this interview." Julia looked directly at her. "If that's what it takes to remind people to have real conversations, then I'm fine with that." The crowd clapped again, and this time it wasn't polite. It was loud, unified. The camera zoomed in on Julia, capturing the fire in her eyes and the subtle confidence in her smile. For a moment, she looked like she owned not just the table, but the entire studio. Joy tried to move to the next topic, but the rhythm of the show was gone. The energy had shifted, and everyone felt it. Every time Joy tried to lighten the mood, Julia's calm presence drew it back to something real, something honest. It was the kind of television moment that producers dream about and hosts dread, unpredictable, raw, impossible to fake.